been wanting to ring that bell for a long time, so we got to do it in. I've been practicing at home, though, so I haven't lost my touch. But welcome back. It's awesome to be back in the Hall of Mirrors. So Linda told me yesterday it's been 104 days since we were back in this building. So welcome back, and hopefully we're here for a very, very long time. So, we've accomplished a lot over the last 90 days or so, and to everyone's credit, it's been amazing. But you know what, being back in person, there's something with that we all love and we've all missed so tremendously over the last 90 days or so, 104 days actually. So welcome back, it's amazing. And I was going to wear my mask, but they told me that they wouldn't be able to understand me, so forgive me for that. But if I had my mask on, I was going to have a huge smile behind it because we're back. So today we have another first. It's a live meeting, but we have a virtual speaker. So I think that opens up some opportunities for us to do other things longer term as well. But today we have Sam Lightner Jr., who's with us, not here, but he's actually in Wyoming. And he's an accomplished author, rock climber, world traveler, and it's also a member of the Rotary Club of Lander, Wyoming. So a lot of connections with our club here. And virtually everything that he's done over his last 40 years have been related to the sport of rock climbing, and his writing surrounds that as well. So hopefully in a few minutes he can help me conquer my fear of heights. This is about as high as I get, and I'm comfortable. So anyway, to get us started in the right way, I'm going to ask Dan Shea to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dan. And now for the invocation and the four-way test, Uda Popke.
Thank you, President Dave. It is a pleasure to be here today and to see so many familiar faces. Let's bow our heads. Thank you, Almighty God, for bringing us together today. A special thank you for guiding the club. Thanks to President Dave, the board president of the Rotary Club Foundation, John Farmeyer, and all the many members to realize how much good we could do right here, starting with the support for the employees of the hotel, of the Hilton Hotel, who take such good care of us. And I think after we're done, we'll give them a hand. Please be with the scientists who are working on a vaccine. You did find a solution in the Middle Ages. Could you please fix this? Amen. Now, for the four-way test, for all we say and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? If I feel, and I know we all feel, if everyone would use this test each day, it would be a much better world. Thank you.
And I think we should give a round of applause for their Hilton staff for welcoming us back. Very good idea, Uta.
Thank you. Oh, not done.
You can be seated. See, we even forgot that part of it, right? So today is a special day. Not only are we back with each other, but actually it's a special day. We're going to recognize somebody that we could have done this a couple months ago, but unfortunately we weren't meeting. So I wanted to save this for a time where we are meeting face to face. So I would like to ask Christy to come up to the podium, please. So you're wondering why you're up here, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. Well, today we're going to roast you. No, I'm kidding. But today we're going to celebrate Christy's 10th anniversary with this club. So we've also invited some very special guests to be with us today. I don't know if you saw them or not, but this may be your life story today as well. We've invited your mother and your stepfather and that girl, Sydney, your daughter, I think.
Yeah.
And then Todd is with us today as well to celebrate this 10th anniversary for you. So the door must be locked. One of the members of your family is a little slower than the others right now, unfortunately. So to celebrate Christy's 10th anniversary, Linda actually put together a video of the last 10 years. So this is going to be really fun. So turn your attention to the screen, please. So Christy is a small token of our appreciation for everything you've done over the last 10 years. We want to give you an award and a small gift, token of our appreciation. But let me read the inscription on the award. The Rotary, maybe I can you hold that? No. The Rotary Club of Cincinnati 10-year anniversary to Christy Suzik. Congratulations on your anniversary with the Rotary Club of Cincinnati. You have been such a significant part of our team, and we couldn't imagine our organization without you. I think that says it all.
Thanks, everybody. Well, it's been a wild ride. 10 years, longest I've ever been at any one job, and it's just been, I love all you people. I mean, you're my favorite people, and it's been really sad to miss you guys over the last couple months, but I'm glad we're back together, and thanks for this. It's 10 more years, another 10 years, I'm in.
Christy, I'm sorry, your contract says you have another 20. So, all right, well, thanks so much. So shifting gears a little bit with some other announcements, we have our first hands-on service project coming up in July, and one of the things that we've missed, I think, desperately over the last 90-plus days is being able to get out in the community and roll up our sleeves and do good work for those that are in need. We've done a lot over the last 90 days in a variety of different ways, but our first project is going to take place on July the 18th in the morning, and with a rain date of the following Saturday. Hopefully it doesn't rain. But we're going to be doing landscaping work at the Norwood City Schools. And we need about 30 members to take part in that project, and bring your shovels, your spades, your rakes, your bush trimming things, tools, and plenty of garbage bags so we can make that place look spotless. And Bill Stilley is going to manage this project, so anybody that's interested in participating, please reach out to Bill. Looking forward to that. We do have a few birthdays to celebrate this week. Sorry, I'm not going to go back and celebrate all the birthdays over the last 90 days. But this week, on June the 16th, we had Scott Brindamore, Eric Petway, and King Coggeshall. And then the 17th, Brad Winstrup. The 19th, Bob Will. And last but not least, Tammy Young on the 22nd. So happy birthday to one and all. All right, a few other dates that you need to put on your calendar. By a show of hands, how many people have been to a Rotary International Convention? So a good number of you. I went to my first one last year, and it was unbelievable. I don't know how to describe it other than that. But unfortunately, this year the convention has been canceled, but it's going to be a virtual convention. So instead of being in Honolulu, you're going to be in your homes. But there's an opportunity for each one of us to participate in that convention virtually. But you have to go on and you have to sign up with through the Rotary International website to be able to participate. So I think, I don't have the schedule memorized, but it's over a 3-day period of time, and there's different things that you can get involved with and events you can participate in along the way. But the keynote addresses are amazing. I'd highly recommend that you take some time to listen to those. But that's an opportunity for those that, especially who have not been to a convention before. So please sign up for that. Next week, our meeting is going to be back here again, and it's going to be the final meeting of this Rotary year. Laura Mitchell, who's the superintendent of Cincinnati Public Schools, is going to be our speaker, kind of giving us the State of the Union for CPS at this point in time. And fortunately for me, and fortunately for you, maybe, I'm going to be on vacation. So Brett LeBar is going to be taking over the mic next week, so he'll get to be able to work off a little bit of the dust. Maybe he won't even need to next week before he takes over. And speaking of that, he's going to be taking over on July the 9th. That's the changing of the guard. So that's when I get to hand the baton or the gavel or whatever to Brett. So that should be a great day. And I think you're going to love Brett. He and I have spent a lot of time together over the last 12 months at least, and spent a lot of time talking about philosophies and perspectives on where to take the club. And also spent a lot of time with Melinda in those conversations as well. But you're going to love him. Where is Brett? I can't see because of the light. There he is back there. So he has got a lot of great things planned, and I think you're really, really going to enjoy next year. So, and then last but not least, we had Wally Emerling Day scheduled, I don't know, Linda, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So it's going to be rescheduled for July the 16th. So that's going to be a special day in our club as it is every year. So please, if you can make it for that, that'd be awesome. All right. Well, we're going to get into our speaker. I'm going to introduce Sam to our group, and then he will take over. And then after that, we're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. So I'll come down, put my mask up, bring the mic down to you, and you can ask questions of Sam, and then he'll answer them at that point in time. So Sam Lightner Jr. is a rock climber who has notched first ascents around the world. He's an author of books including All Elevations Unknown and The Heavy Green, The Most Classified Battle of the Vietnam War, and a writer whose articles have been published in many, many national magazines. Sam's climbing has taken him across the globe. He was among the first to climb in the Ha Long Bay in Vietnam, on Moon Hill in southern China, in Railay Bay in Thailand, and also the Vang Vieng province of Laos. His writing about these places and the adventures that ensued is credited with exposing North American alpinists to a new exotic locations around the world that have since become rock climbing destinations. Sam was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, but grew up in Jackson, Wyoming, and he actually learned to climb the Tetons when he was only 16 years old. He attended Southern Methodist University and also the University of Wyoming, where he studied history. And he lived in the Krabi province of Thailand, for much of the 90s and 2000s, in the days following the December 1994 tsunami in Thailand. And he created Rally for Railay, which he helped search for the missing and assisted the body identification, and along the way raised over $70,000 to help people in Thailand from purchasing, or from everything from purchasing food supplies to buying fishermen new boats. And he's also called Moab, Utah, and Banff, Alberta, Canada home at certain points in his life. But he moved to Lander in 2012, where he lives with his wife, Liz, and his dogs, Lexi and Moki. Traveling and living in such diverse places has helped Sam greatly as a writer. Not only has it provided him a plethora of settings to build stories upon, but also given insight into diverse peoples and cultures. Sam says, "I never really intended to be a writer. It just happened. I fell in love with Thailand on my first trip to the country in 89, and was so inspired that I had to put my experience down with pen on paper. Since then, he's been traveling and writing all over the world, and most of his work has revolved around the outdoor industry, specifically climbing, but he's passionate about history and actually prefers to write on the subject. So with that, please give a warm welcome to fellow Rotarian Sam Lightner.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Yeah, let's just make sure you can hear me right now, right? Okay. This new COVID protocol we've got, you never know when the Zoom things are working right and everything. So thank you for having me. That was a very nice introduction too. I feel good about myself right now. I'm coming to you from Lander, Wyoming. We're at the foot of the Wind River Mountain Range. It is a auspicious day in Wyoming because we all find out whether we drew our tags this year for hunting season. I did not. So I can hold that against the governor this year. I'll just dive right into the show I'm going to do because it's kind of self-explanatory. Got to do our little share screen thing here. Here we go. All right. So this is the book Heavy Green, and that I was going to talk about today, and I'll just carry on to this here. So this is my first memory. When I was 2.5, my parents sat me down and said, "Someday you're going to be happy that we made you watch this." And I didn't really know what I was watching. I knew it was on the moon, but I couldn't understand anything anybody was saying. You know, didn't know what it was, but that was my first memory. This was my second memory, and it was on the news. I think, you know, most folks, I can't see who all I'm speaking to here, but there's a lot of us in Rotary that were alive during the Vietnam War and obviously before the Vietnam War. But when you only had three channels on the TV and news was a major thing to watch in the evening, this was life in the late 60s and early 70s. Every night it was the lead story. How it was dividing the country was the lead story. And as a matter of fact, the very first thing I can remember other than the landing on the moon was a video piece of soldiers marching into the side door of a C-130 transport while coffins were being moved out the back of the transport. Pretty graphic, and I think it stuck with me. So we're gonna flash forward a little ways here. This is where I grew up. That's Mount Moran in Jackson, Wyoming, and my best friend's dad was a mountain guide and taught us how to climb when we were little kids. And, you know, by my teenage years, once I could drive, my mom couldn't tell me I couldn't go. So we'd go out and go climbing. And, you know, we had the rocks right there in our backyards. This is me way back in the day, climbing on Blacktail Butte. That's the Snake River, Grand Teton, thunderstorms coming in, so forth. But climbing has taken me all over the world. I did live in Moab, Utah. This picture here is on Castleton Tower. You can see the silhouette of the tower. Castle Rock Entertainment uses this tower as its sort of symbol. So I lived in Moab. I lived in Banff. You have to put in time in Banff if you're going to be a good ice climber. And I wound up living up there. And then I've traveled all over the world. This is on the Eiger in Switzerland, looking down a couple of miles at the town of Grindelwald. But my favorite area, as your chair mentioned, was this place in southern Thailand. I went there on a lark. I thought it was going to be a terrible trip. I thought it was going to be just mosquito bites and just being scared and itchy and salty. And we pull up onto this beach that we had researched that's in the distance there, and knew that from National Geographic there were going to be rocks, and that's all we thought we'd have was snakes, rocks, and mosquitoes. And we get out of the boat, and there's mostly naked European girls lying around. Some people walk up and hand us freshly sliced pineapple and say, "Welcome to the beach." And then we saw the rocks, and it was like, okay, we're in paradise. And as was said, I had such a great time there. I ended up moving there, but I also had to write about it. And that's exactly what I did. I sat down on the airplane, and this is before laptops. I sat down with a pen and paper and wrote down what had happened, and mailed it to a climbing magazine, and they said, "Wow, this is really cool. Could you do some more of this?" And so I had a career. Well, one of the places, I went all over the world. I went out Africa, Europe, everywhere, but I haven't been to Antarctica yet, but all of it for climbing. But the place I liked the most was southern Thailand because I liked this rock. This is called Kachinaburi limestone, and it's about 600 feet high in southern Thailand. But it's actually, here's my place is right about here where the arrow is. It's actually at its thickest, thus the biggest walls of it are in the Annamite Mountains, the Muang Trong, which run the spine of Laos and Vietnam. And I got very interested in trying to find these bigger sections of this rock. which were all in these formerly 4 countries: North Vietnam, South Vietnam, which are now just Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. However, in the early 90s, late 80s, Americans weren't allowed to go to most of these places. Cambodia was still essentially fighting the war. Vietnam had then become one country, and Americans they're allowed to go by the Vietnamese, but America wouldn't let you go. And Laos was pretty much closed off. But we snuck in telling our government we were going to Canada, basically. And we went and did go to Vietnam to climb in Ha Long Bay in about 1991. We were some of the first Americans to go back into the country after the war. This is actually in downtown Hanoi. That's me when I had lots of hair. And that's the wreckage of a B-52 and one of the S-2 missiles that would have been used to shoot down that B-52. These guys did not believe we were coming there to climb. They thought we were coming for some sort of CIA thing. They went through all of our stuff, and we were given guards to watch over us the whole time. Then, once they saw us actually climbing, this is in Ha Long Bay. It's about 2 miles from where the first pilot shot down in the war in 1965 was shot down. American pilot. This is in that bay. And once they saw us climbing, we were suddenly celebrities. And everybody, all the guards wanted us to come each to their own villages. And they wanted us to, meet their families and all this sort of stuff. So we traveled all over the northern part of Vietnam for just a couple of weeks, and then left. I wrote a bunch of articles about it, actually. And, that was our first trip into that part of the world. In order to learn about that place at that time, because Americans had been out of the region for 15, 16 years at that point, and you basically, they were some of the poorest countries in the world, so they didn't have a lot of information currently coming out. And of course, there was no internet or anything like that. You had to do research, and you had to go into sort of military things for that research. And I found out about this mountain that I really wanted to get to called Phu Pa Thi. And I found out about it because of this operation known as Heavy Green. It had been classified up until 1989, and it came out of classification. I found out about it. I wanted to get there, but it was in Laos. Laos was closed off until 1996, and we immediately went in. This is me with some of my German climbing buddies on the Mekong, but we couldn't get to that mountain. We got partway into the country, and then we basically got shut down. So I traveled through a number of countries. This is a shot from Cambodia. The very worst parts of the Second Indochina War took place there at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. On another trip, I tried to get into Laos and get to that mountain, and I got as far as the Plain of Jars, which is pretty close and was major battle zone, but during the war. But I still didn't make it to the mountain that I wanted to get to. So a lot of people here probably know the basic history of that war, but I'm gonna fill everybody in just the same to make sure. The mountain I'm trying to get to is up here. It's called Phu Pa Thi. This is northern Laos. Capital of Laos is here. This is southern Thailand. Krabi is where my house is. South Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, North Vietnam. Goods would come in on ships and so forth that were used to fight the Americans in the South. They would come into Haiphong Harbor in the north. Some would come overland in China, and then they would be put on what we dubbed the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was just a myriad of trails that went over the mountains right here, and then went down through Laos. And then into South Vietnam, and were used against American soldiers. So that put all of that stuff on the backside of this mountain range here that I was trying to get to, and on the backside of this. Pupati, and our bombers would attack and try and stop these things, but they couldn't do so during the monsoon period, or they could, but they were fairly ineffective because overcast in the skies. So we came up with this idea. We would put basically an air traffic control center on top of this mountain that supposedly had this very large face of rock on it. And this is the thing that I was researching. I found out about was, oh my gosh, we put an air traffic control center there so that we could direct bombers around Hanoi and, take out the supplies that were coming in without accidentally taking out the Russian embassy or something, and even escalating the war far greater. So I was trying to get up to this place up here, and it was a very difficult thing to pull off. But give you here a shot of the stuff being transported down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They were carrying thousands and thousands of tons of stuff per year down it, and we were trying to stop it. Laos became the most heavily bombed country in history. That even holds up till today. And when you travel through Laos, you see the stuff that was dropped. These were anti-personnel bombs, cluster bomb units. You see them all over the country. You get used to, when you're traveling there, just seeing unexploded ordnance. I'm not sure if Iraq and Afghanistan now have more unexploded ordnance, but up until just a few years ago, there was so much in this country, it hadn't gotten cleaned up. And the funny thing is, eventually they start making, lemonade from lemons. You see the use for this stuff being, there's boats made out of it. There's a planter, everything. So anyway, you get kind of used to that. And it's all because of the bombing that took place. And that bombing in 1967, 1968, a good bit of it in North Vietnam and right around this area of northern Laos was being directed from Pupati, from our little station we put up there. We had allies in Laos. This man right here, his name is Vang Pao. He just passed away a few years ago. These are the Hmong. They're a hill tribe group that lived in Laos and a little bit in northern and central Vietnam, but mostly Laos. They had actually been on the side of the French in the First Indochina War, and then just immediately signed on with us in the Second Indochina War. Vang Pao has a distinction I like to point out. He is the only non-American to ever be able to independently call in a B-52 strike. That tells you how highly he was thought of in the war by his American allies. So anyway, all this bombing is going on, and the Vietnamese realize we've got this air traffic control center on top of this mountain. And they go about trying to stop it, to take out this facility. And we realize the facility, it's going on right during the Tet Offensive. We realize how effective the facility is too. We don't want them to take it out. So this secret battle takes place around what was called Lima Site 85, which is Pupati. We called it Lima Site 85. And North Vietnamese Army on one side, Hmong and Thai forces on the other. And then there's also this, we won't talk much about it right here, but I don't want to spoil anything, but the Dak Cong, which is the special forces of the North Vietnamese. Major battle takes place, and I'm not going to tell you what happens in it. I'm going to tell you, go get a copy of Heavy Green and read the story. It's pretty amazing, but I wrote the book without actually getting to go to the spot. And finally, just a few months after the book came out, I got to go there. This right back here, this ridge is that mountain that I had written about, and so much had taken place over the years, and I actually got to go there. So that's a shot where I got to North Vietnam. But I'll take questions now, or excuse me, Northern Laos. I'll take questions now, and feel free to ask about anything from climbing to what we got here. I got to unshare my screen somehow too.
All right, well, First of all, let's give Sam a round of applause. And then as anybody has questions, I'll come to you and social distance.
So Sam, when you wrote the book, Heavy Green, did you make anything up or is it all nonfiction?
That's a really good question. Everything that takes place in the book is nonfiction. I made up the names of the people because the people who were actually involved, I wasn't sure that they wanted to have the whole thing brought up again, where they may, if the book went really big, they'd be getting bothered by the press or something. And I also had to give them personalities, and I didn't know them very well. I'd talked to a couple of people on the phone, but I didn't want to give them personalities that they didn't actually have. So I made up the people, but the exact same number of people with the exact same jobs and everything, except for one person. To make the story go and to explain all aspects of the Vietnam War, I made a central character who is from Lander, Wyoming. And he is a made-up part of the book. But everything that takes place in the book, all of the missions, all of the way the war was fought, and the way the whole mission unveiled itself, that is all 100% factual.
All right, Hux, I think you had a question.
How are Americans treated in Vietnam now?
It's an interesting question. The Vietnamese want us there so much. We are kind of their Revolutionary War as far as where they hold it up in esteem. Like basically, the poorest country in the world beats the richest country in the world. But they have no real animosity. They're very pleasant people. I'm sure there are people who lost during the war, lost people and stuff, and they would have a little bit of animosity, but you don't get that impression at all. They want to meet you. Who they don't like are the Russians, because the Russians then held war debt over their heads after the war and did a lot of things that were questionable as far as financial stuff to them. And they don't like the Chinese. And that's the real reason why they want us there. The Chinese are encroaching on the Philippines, some islands in the Philippines, and islands that the Vietnamese claim. And they fought a war with the Chinese since they fought us. So they would love to see Americans there. They would love to see American tourists. And they would love to see Americans take a more heavy involvement in helping them and defend their country from China. So the tables have turned.
Okay, so I consider myself pretty much an adventurer, but I have no desire to do rock climbing because it looks downright life-threatening. Now, you said you learned as a child. So if you were teaching an adult, what do we need to know to be safe going mountain climbing in 2 minutes?
First of all, you hire a good guide. The guides that you can hire that are AMGA certified, American Association of Mountain Guides, are qualified to take you. And there's a code amongst mountain guides that, they're going to die before you die. And they're not going out there because they think they're going to die. The way you would learn to climb actually has a lower injury rate than downhill skiing. So that I would not be too worried about it. I would personally recommend. I've got a number of guides I could tell you about, but if you were going to go to Jackson, I would say go with Exum Mountain Guides, and you will have a great time. And by the way, everybody says, it's so common to go, well, I'm afraid of heights. Everyone is afraid of heights. It's one of the two fears you're born with. Well, three fears if you're from Cincinnati. You're born with a fear of heights, you're born with a fear of abandonment, and you're born with a fear that Joe Burrows will be a bust. Other than that, you've just got to get used to it. And that's actually part of the sport, is learning how to keep your head when it's stressful. But it's safer than it looks. You can make it more dangerous. And obviously some of the things I was doing, ice climbing, that's not a real safe thing to do. But it's not as bad as it looks.
Sam, I was in an A6A squadron off the USS Enterprise during the TET in 1968. Thanks for your guidance.
Holy cow. Well, you must have been one of the first A6 pilots then, huh?
No, I wasn't a pilot, but my
Oh.
squadron flew off the Enterprise, and
Okay.
we dropped
I
a lot
had
of
an uncle
bombs
that
on the
was
Ho
on
Chi
the
Minh
Intrepid at
Trail,
the same time. So
on the trail and in the bridges in North Vietnam. And thanks for your efforts.
thank you.
I'd like to also know how you got permission to climb in Halong Bay. I've been to Halong Bay myself, and they wouldn't even let us touch the rocks.
Well, they didn't know what we were doing. They were, to a large degree, I mean, they were feeling our ropes and everything to make sure there weren't antennas in them. You know, they were completely, they had no reason to believe, you know, to them, people go mountain climbing in Nepal. That's it, right? So didn't make any sense. And then as soon as they saw what we wanted to do, you know, since we were the first, there may be laws now that say you can't climb in certain areas. I know there are a number of major climbing areas that have started up in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese actually have a climbing team. But at that time, it was so unique and such a different thing. They didn't have any laws about it. They just saw us doing it and were like, wow, this is really cool. Go for it. But things may have changed since then in certain spots. And Halong Bay is a little bit of a revered place. So Halong may be, a lot of it may be off, you know, untouchable at this point.
Well, I was there in 2010 with my son, and we rode around up in the bay and went underneath and through the arches and the rocks and all that. It was a pretty cool spot. I have one more
Yeah, it's
question.
beautiful.
One more question. Have you ever fallen?
We fall all the time. But the ropes and the equipment are designed to safely catch you. If you use them correctly, you won't get hurt. Now, there have been times where I have fallen. I've had a couple of falls where I've actually gotten hurt, or well, one in particular, because some gear came out of the wall, the rock broke. In the end, it comes down to being my fault. But I have gotten hurt climbing. You know, it's 40 years of doing it. You know, if you do anything for 40 years, this strange things are going to happen. But yeah, we fall a lot. The safest form of climbing, you fall every day, but that rope is designed to absorb energy. It's designed to catch you. Ropes very, very rarely fail, only in really weird circumstances. It's just not as dangerous as it appears. But yes, I have fallen, and I don't like to fall, but I do it regularly.
So Sam, question for you. What was your background research on the war? And then specifically that battle, how did you collect information to write the book?
Initially, so I basically read, once I was starting to live over in Southeast Asia, and you know, I love history. So and once I started to want to find out about more about that area, I was reading everything I could get my hands on that had been written about the Vietnam War, from, you know, Fire in the Lake to individual accounts from pilots and so forth. I did get my hands on the initial or the CIA report on what had taken place at Pupati, LS-85. And that was way back when. And then about 2 years after that came out, a gentleman at the U.S. War College wrote a book about it called One Day Too Many. And that book was very important. And then I've met people who were involved in it on some level. And most of them didn't know all the other things that were going on. I've met a number of people who actually served in Laos secretly as forward air control pilots. They were known as the Ravens. and information from them helped me out. But it's basically, for a long time, it was just getting my hands on whatever book I could get, and a few reports that came out, and then it became once the internet really got going. I mean, there's an entire website now dedicated to the battle for Pupati. It's very elaborate, and it has virtually every bit of information you could want to know about it. How much of this was fired and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of information out there now, but initially it was the initial reports and books.
As a photographer, what kind of things do you want us to see and not forget? And as a historian, what kinds of things are you really curious about?
Taking photos, it depends on what I'm shooting. I'll highlight something in the photo. But I've shot so many different things that, if it's climbing, I might be trying to highlight the background, or I might be trying to highlight the actual feature the person is climbing. If it's a landscape, I'll usually pick something that I focus on, and I'll try and get your eye to focus on it with the photography. In my writing, I just enjoy history, and my most recent project that just came out this spring is a Wyoming history book. So I'm working on another one that's a similar type thing, almost an audio type version of it for next year. But there are stories in our history that I believe are important for us to know, and I would like to be one of the people who can write history in a way that's entertaining enough that people want to learn it. Really dry history is a really hard thing to learn. I don't even really like reading really dry history. So I would like to be able to write entertaining history so that certain stories, we still have them. We're still talking about them 100, 200, 500 years from now.
Steve, it's Pete, and it's great to have you as our speaker here today. You're 1,300 miles away. This is wonderful technology in a very curious situation. So my question is in regards to what is going on in Wyoming right now during this coronavirus episode, and is Wyoming open for business, for tourists?
Technically, Wyoming is open for business. I don't know that every single place is currently open, but the governor has opened up a lot of it. We have a lot of things that our state's famous for that are not going to happen this year. Here in Lander, we have the International Climbers Festival every year. It's the longest running climbing festival in the world. And that's gonna be a very small, low-key thing. Cheyenne Frontier Days, largest rodeo in the world, is not going to happen this year. But Yellowstone is opening up, Grand Teton's opening up, all of the other towns across the museums are open with certain rules. You gotta wear a mask when you're indoors and all that sort of stuff. But we are open. We have only had 20 fatalities in Wyoming. We're very rural. I think we're a fair bit larger than Ohio, but we only have 500,000 people in our whole state. So the rural character of the state makes it so we got to get in the car and drive for 20 minutes just to get to the bathroom. So you just don't have the density that's causing things like it did in New York. And where we have had problems is right here in Fremont County, where I live. We have the Wind River Indian Reservation, and the Shoshone and the Northern Arapaho are very family-oriented people. They like to have these get-togethers, or 60 people will get together on the weekend for kind of a barbecue and stuff, and that's just built into their culture. And they've had a disproportionate share of I think it's like 40% of our cases in the whole state have been just on the reservation. So the rest of the state, there are entire counties that don't have any COVID right now. And Jackson and the northwest part of the state that gets most of the tourism, it's had a fair bit of it, but you've got good medical facilities there, and I think they've only had one fatality. And we're opened up again.
All right. Well, how about a round of applause for Sam Lightner?
Thank you.
Well, I loved all the questions. I liked Nancy's questions quite a bit because she asked about how dangerous it was and if you could learn how to do this. And you've given me so much confidence that next week when I go to the beach, I'm going to climb the biggest rock I can find. So I'm looking forward to that. So thanks for being here. And
Thank you
as a
for having me.
Rotarian, you know all about polio. I don't have to tell you about what we've done as an organization overall, but where we are, we're very, very close to eradicating polio. And in your honor for being here today, what'd you say, Pete, 1,300 miles away? We want to make a donation to the End Polio Now campaign in your honor. So thanks so much for being here.
That's super nice. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And when you do make it to Cincinnati, we meet every Thursday at noon in the Hall of Mirrors. So we'd love to have you with us at some point.
And actually, I will make it to Cincinnati at some point here. My sister lives in Lexington. So I have flown through the Cincinnati airport a number of times. I'll come see you guys.
That would be awesome.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, that wraps up our first meeting after 104 days. So thanks so much for being with us today. And thanks to those that are watching on Facebook Live. Next week, again, we're going to have Laura Mitchell, the superintendent of the Cincinnati Public Schools, with us. And then after that, we'll take a break. We won't have a meeting on the 2nd of July, and then changing the guard on July 9th. So with that, everybody stay healthy, and look forward to seeing you very soon. Meeting adjourned.